Hey y'all, Camille here with the Capitol Report. Let's get started with a new update on your favorite topic, the budget. Last Tuesday, the governor sat in front of the House Appropriations Committee to explain his updated budget proposal for the fiscal year that begins on July 1st. If you remember, in the upcoming fiscal year, we are facing a deficit of over $750 million. In the hearing, the governor publicly called on a task force to work on a plan to get us a down payment on comprehensive tax reform. He said we need a tax structure that produces revenue that is stable and predictable. It needs to be a fair and simple structure, and it needs to raise a sufficient amount of revenue. Along with this proclamation, the governor expressed once again, based on the impending deficit and his desire for tax reform, that there will be a second special session to address these revenue needs. Although the governor did not give us a specific start date, he stated legislators who live over an hour away will be spending the night on June 6th, alluding to the special session beginning on June 7th. As I mentioned in my last report, we had a big day Wednesday in the House Natural Resources Committee. We had two water bills up that we were especially concerned about. House Bills 527 and 528 by Representative Robbie Carter both attempted to prohibit withdrawal of surface water for the purposes of hydraulic fracturing. Had 528 passed, it would have also prohibited the withdrawal of groundwater, specifically for fracturing. As Gifford Briggs, our vice president, stated in his testimony, moving this legislation forward would mean another regulation and be another step in a process that would make conducting business in Louisiana more difficult. Our industry is already regulated by 3 agencies, and the withdrawal of water from scenic waterways is a last resort to begin with. Briggs continued to provide testimony against the bill by explaining to the committee that 80% of our activity was previously focused on the use of groundwater for the purposes of hydraulic fracturing, and we transitioned over to the surface water usage at the request of the state to protect our resources as much as possible. So, by attempting to prohibit the withdrawal of scenic water, as a last resort to keep in mind, the water would have to be transported in and would leave us with 2 scenarios. Either it is going to be more expensive, or the company would simply not be able to drill the well. Representative Blake Miguez from New Iberia ultimately made a motion to involuntarily defer the bill. Now, when a bill is voluntarily deferred, the sponsor of the bill can bring the bill back at a later time. But if the bill is involuntarily deferred, it is permanently removed from the process, and that is ultimately what happened after a vote of 12 yeas and 5 nays. House Bill 528 was up next on the agenda, but was quickly voluntarily deferred by the sponsor. Before I move on, I wanted to give a big thank you to all of the committee members who supported our industry on House Bill 527. All right, now on Thursday, Senator Alain, whose name I'm sure I've pronounced differently in every report, had 2 bills up in the Senate Natural Resources Committee. Senate Bill 371 by Senator Brett Alain lowers the threshold in the Orphan Well Program from when the Secretary will be authorized to recover restoration costs from previous well operators from $250,000 to $50,000. The bill was amended in committee to change the threshold to $100,000 and will move on in the process. LOGA opposed the bill and will continue our opposition as it moves on. The next bill that was up in committee, Senate Bill 427, essentially allows the Commissioner of Conservation to establish rules that allow people to receive credits that they can then use for financial security requirements when they plug and abandon a well. The bill also establishes some options the Commissioner must include in any regulations addressing inactive wells. We have been working very closely with Senator Alain on this bill to make sure it remains in the posture that does not negatively impact our industry. Gifford Briggs provided information when asked, and with no objections, the bill was reported favorably from committee. All right, to close this week's report, last week we sent out a document outlining taxes that have both direct and potential impacts on the oil and gas industry that you need to be aware of. If you did not receive the document, you can find the PDF for download on our Capitol Report resources page. It is a list of all the tax increases you might see over the next few years because of House Bill 61 and House Bill 62 that we talked about at length over the special session. But I want you to keep in mind that we are still working with the Department of Revenue as they continue to work to fully understand the impacts of these revenue-raising measures. You might see some changes over time. Don't forget, as we continue this year's regular session, make sure you keep an eye out for news on the oil and gas industry and the 2016 legislative session right here. And please continue to share this video with your colleagues and friends. Until next time, this is Camille Ivy-O'Donnell with LOGA TV.